Obviously, we have secure chat functionality. Today, you talk to a banker, but the banker does not answer immediately. So it is obviously what we're now trying to do is to get a generative AI agent to be able to give you an answer immediately, but yes, to be able to understand when it needs to route you to a human agent, when that is what is necessary. If out of every 100 Rand that we give out, we need to get 99 Rand back. That's typically, if you think about the long-term loss ratio for the bank, is sitting at about 1%. They will tell their kids, but their daughters or their sons, study a profession, become a lawyer, doctor, engineer, etc. Because that's a good. And what we are saying is actually data analytics has become a profession.
This episode of ITWeb TV is brought to you in association with ITWeb Security Summit, the must-attend gathering of IT, security, and business decision makers. Visit itweb.co.za for more information. Today we are joined by Dr. Christoph Nieuwoudt, with the FNB Chief Data and Analytics Officer. Today we are going to be talking to him about careers in data science, data analytics, and what FNB is doing in that regards. Welcome to ITWeb TV, Dr. Chris.
Admire, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Hi, I'm George Little, and I'm co-lead of Brunswick Group's cybersecurity and privacy practice. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I'm so looking forward to being a keynote speaker at the forthcoming ITWeb Security Summit in Cape Town. Catch me on May 28th. We're going to be discussing some fascinating topics like the overall cyber threat landscape in 2024 and 25. We'll be talking about misinformation and disinformation. We'll be talking about where companies get it wrong in cyber defense and what steps your organization should take to prepare for emerging threats. This should be a fascinating conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Cape Town.
Awesome. Yeah, this is the second time that I'm talking to you regarding FNB's progress in regards to data science, data analytics. The last time, if I remember correctly, you were looking to bring in about 1,700 data scientists. How has that progressed?
Yeah, that's progressed really well. We're sitting at over 2,000 now, if you include full-time staff and contractors contingents, probably closer to 2,100. So it has been an area that has been growing rapidly from probably about 1,300 3 to 4 years ago. So it is an area of big growth, and it continues to evolve with AI, generative AI now being the latest topics that are also driving it.
So are you still looking to bring in more data scientists?
Yeah, I think we're not growing at the same rate as before, but yes, we're always bringing in new graduates. And one of the big reasons is that there's quite a big shift in the skills that are required. So previously, I've mentioned that we were switching from quants to more data science and from more like business intelligence to data engineers. And that is still ongoing. So we still want people, as opposed to doing just analytics, they must build and deploy models that can do decisioning and solve customer problems in an automated way. And then instead of just generating business intelligence reports, to be able to do data engineering. So that is to do the piping of data, that it flows, that it is there on time, that the quality of data is assured. And the latest shift with the AI and generative AI means that there are different skills. Like, for example, programming in Python is now quite a big need if you want to use any of the large language model and the generative AI libraries. Then that is a different skill set that is required. You're also working with cloud a lot because the computational platforms, often you don't have all of those processors in your own data centers. So you're making use of one of the big three hyperscalers. So the AWS, Azure, or GCP, the big three players. And that does mean that there's a shift in skills. And often these skills are not mature in the market. So you're training up new people at the same time as actually you're developing and training your internal staff to do these transitions.
So are you getting these graduates straight from varsity?
Yes, a lot of them come. We have a big graduate program that cuts across the group, in FNB and in RMB and in First Rand. There's graduates being taken in, and yes, we are continuously hiring. I think that is really, I guess, as you're replacing staff in the group, and in FNB particularly, we like to hire young talent in on an ongoing basis. Because I guess internal succession planning is actually quite mature. So we're not necessarily hiring at the very senior level internally, but taking in grads, as you're saying.
So why is it that there's such a huge demand or a huge need for a bank like FNB to be bringing in this young talent into the organization, especially like in regards to data science? Why are they important nowadays?
Okay, I'll talk a bit about the main use cases for AI and generative AI. Obviously, those are not the only things we're doing. There's a lot of more basic things that we're doing, including developing whatever decisioning models, etc. That would be based on more traditional algorithms, and including AI. But particularly on generative AI, let's say I can point out 4 main applications that we're seeing, and that's not just an FNB. That is really, I guess, what is happening with banks and financial institutions across the world and other institutions as well. Interesting, I always tell people, if you think that if you've used ChatGPT or any of these tools, you would have figured out that these things are pretty good at Shakespeare and it can write a sonnet, etc. For you. But it is even better at coding than it is at human language. So if you are looking for, to program in Java and Python, COBOL, whatever languages you're interested in, they really are good at that. And it is not just at writing code, but it is at helping people write business requirement specifications, translating them to functional requirement specifications. It is about documenting code that may already exist. It may be in refactoring code. Yes, it is about generating new code as well, but it's also about testing code, generating test coverage that actually gives you so that you can do better testing of all the different scenarios that can develop when code is executed, etc. So it is actually going to quite transform the way that IT development happens. And that's just one area, but it is a big area in the bank. 2 other big areas. The first one would be really customer facing. So, for example, where we have got on the FNB app, we've got search and chat capability. Now, that same capability translates into, for example, when you're calling our contact center, then we have the speech to text technology there, and we can integrate some of our the replies that you can get from basically a robotic voice, but to be able to get to customers quickly, to route it to the right human agent is still what happens in a lot of cases. But as it becomes more powerful, we should be able to give you answers. And you can imagine people don't like waiting on a line for somebody to answer if they have a simple question. We should be able to answer it, whether you are typing that on secure chat on the app or whether you are calling our contact center. We should be able to do it very quickly. Another big application is really personalization in terms of marketing. Nowadays, a lot of customers will research us on the internet before even if they're existing customers, before they buy a product, they will look around, etc. So the ability to integrate information about what's happening with our customers on the internet into our own channel infrastructure, and to be able to give them the right contextual offering, etc., being able to integrate advice components into that, how we are positioning the marketing, etc., is an area that we're really developing. It's not that mature yet, so if you're seeing ads from us that are not highly personalized yet, this is still something that we're really working on. But you can imagine it is very powerful if you can do marketing to a segment of one customer. So if you, Admire, are going in, we can really use your information, if we have your consent to do that, to give you highly tailored and precise offerings that suit your needs, as opposed to more generic content. And then the fourth really application is where we build internal chat capabilities for knowledge management. So now today, if I want to know anything about human capital policies, risk policies, compliance policies, I can go onto my FNB chat and I can ask questions and get answers, and not just get an answer, but get a link to the actual documents that contain the answer. So those are some of the ways in which which AI can democratize access to information in the bank. And that's really, we see this as really still only the tip of the iceberg. The technology has advanced so much in the last year and a half since it was first launched, that there is still so much more runway on it. And we think that, yes, the direct impact is on people that are employed in data analytics, because they're helping to create these solutions. And that's why I said there's, the specific skill sets to be able to do that. But more generically, actually, all our staff, that, if you think about it, we work in a knowledge economy. So in the bank, we don't really have physical factories, etc. We have some cash and ATMs. So there is some physical components, branches. But really, what most of our staff do is they are processing information, relating to a customer or to a process, and, coming up with recommendations and answers and taking decisions. And a lot of that can be assisted using AI, and generative AI has really enabled it to be able to use unstructured data like speech or text or images, which has really now made it much more mainstream, because our staff can ask an AI agent questions themselves instead of asking another expert. They don't even need to know how AI works to be able to use it, because it is relatively easy.
Also, I was reading this other report, like banks like yourselves, they are actually like recycling these kind of skills. You would find there's so much demand for these skills that we are talking about. Are you also seeing the same thing? Like maybe one person can be a data scientist at FNB, next thing your competitor poaches the same person, and so forth, and vice versa, and something like that. Is that really happening in the industry?
I think there was a stage probably a year or two ago when there was significant churn. It's when the retailers, so the food, clothing retailers, they started to build big data science divisions themselves. I'm not going to name them, but you would know who they are. Then we saw quite a bit of flow from areas like banking into other industries. I think the market has become a little bit more quiet in that respect. It's there's more of a hunt for more, a bit more specific skills that are the main shortages. But I do think that for South Africa to build up competency through our universities in terms of the programs that they have, that's been a big drive of ourselves. So, we have partnerships with 4 universities, at least in my area, that we are trying to promote. What kind of candidates are we looking for? What kind of skills that they should have in their programs? Some of them have implemented more specialized programs that are closer to giving data engineering, data science, computer engineering, or computer science skills, and that are more relevant for what we need. So I do think that there is a whole ecosystem at play here, and then obviously even from what schools are generating, and all the way back to early childhood development. I think South Africa needs to do a lot more on education to be competitive in the fourth industrial revolution, where we need a very good mix of these skills. And what we're finding, what research is also showing, is that you have to have a level of skill to be able to use these AIs and generative AIs. For example, if there's a whole field called prompt engineering. You must have heard of that. So it's not actually an engineering field, but it is where people understand how to phrase questions and how to give these models background on what kind of questions their customers will be asking to guide the bot in giving the right kind of solutions. So it is actually, this technology is going completely mainstream, where actually it's going to impact everybody. And even if you're in the field of education, the ability to use these, if you're a student nowadays and your teacher doesn't know the answer, or you don't have access to a tutor, you can ask generative AI, and school level questions are typically relatively easily answered by these models. They're not always precise with mathematics, because they're not specifically designed to solve mathematics problems. But you would be surprised actually at the the later models are becoming really good at that as well. And they can answer complex questions in mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, up to easily university level, and even in university level questions. So the impact is going to be big in education. The impact is going to be big in law. The impact is going to be big in medicine. So a number of other industries are also going to be quite impacted, whether you are in the field of AI yourself. The ability and the use of AI, you would have seen what we discussed earlier, you know, in terms of writing articles, etc. It certainly does not replace a human, but it can greatly augment the thinking. It can be quite structured and, it can be quite useful in terms of how one wants to approach any subject.
Maybe just specifically to FNB, what kind of use cases are you finding these emerging generative AI technologies?
Okay, excellent. So I guess beyond the ones I mentioned, like coding, and then obviously customer-facing bots and personalization. In terms of the wider area, we are in human capital now. We're finding human capital, risk compliance. If you think about the amount of regulation and policies, etc., it can be quite complex and daunting to even understand all of those things even in a given field of study. So the ability to be able to upload and what we call vectorize. So what it converts all these documents that are words into numbers that the models are much better at assimilating. And then when you ask it the question, it can relatively easily find the right content that is in your own internal documents and give that to any staff member that has a question. And that is really the starting point, is actually, okay, can it understand the policies to the point where it can answer questions on it? The next step then is to see how you can use this to automate some of the more basic problems. So, for example, a big area in the bank would be credit applications. Now, some areas would use scoring, so they would automatically give a customer a rating based on a score. So that would be, for example, if you're applying for a personal loan, then that process is relatively well automated in terms of scoring. But if you are a company that is applying for a finance facility and it has a certain structure, there may be some collateral or not, there's related parties, etc. It can be quite a lot more complex. And it's operating in a given industry. It has certain customer bases and certain suppliers. It's operating in a given geography. You can imagine that is not really a simple problem to just solve with a scorecard. So that is where helping put together the information, and it is often going to a committee that is going to read a report. So it has to write, actually, to collect the information, to summarize it, to compile it in a way that's easy to understand. And yes, then humans are still taking the decision. But there's a lot of efficiency, you can imagine, where it may take weeks or even a month to put together a complex credit application. This can really accelerate that. And then that can really help in multiple other fields, not just for credit, because if you are advising a client on products, if you want to highlight risks to a customer, if you want to do, for example, in the investment bank, where people are doing deals for customers, etc., these tools are really quite powerful, and I think they are still at the infancy. But these are the kind of applications where I do think it will actually impact all areas in the bank. So whether you're in marketing, in sales, whether you're in legal, or whether you are in a risk area, or whether you're in customer operations, the technology is going to make your job easier. It's going to improve your productivity, and it can also improve your job satisfaction because it can automate some of that mundane collection and summarization of information for you.
So are you making use of the generic ones like our chat GPTs, or you've got...
That's a very good question. Okay, so if you think about chat GPT itself, so openai.com, if you go there, then that is a publicly facing bot engine that people can use. But if you're using that, or you're using Bard, or you're using any of the other completely, Bing, publicly facing bot, it does not assure privacy of your information. So look here, it typically is not a big risk if you are asking it stuff that you want to know because you're doing research in your private capacity. But as an institution, we cannot use these tools, we cannot allow staff to use these tools for bank purposes. So obviously what we do there is we have got, in a private virtual cloud, we have got instances that may use similar underlying large language models. Like let's say a ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo would be quite a commonly used model, or even a GTP4 that's now a more advanced model. But that is sitting in a ring-fenced environment where any data that we feed into it and any questions that you ask and any output that it retains is sitting in a private environment. So we can completely protect the privacy of our clients' data, which we absolutely have to do. And it's not even accessible by the party that is the cloud provider themselves. So whether it's let's say Amazon AWS or a Microsoft Azure or a Google GCP, Google Cloud Platform, they are not accessing this data. It is sitting in a ring-fenced environment, obviously hosted there. So yes, everybody is using to some extent generic large language models, but the way that you use it has to be contained to ensure privacy. And then you have to put other controls on top of it that is narrowing the focus of this thing, because obviously you could ask ChatGPT any question about any topic in the world, but that's not necessarily useful for us in the bank. And if you're applying it for a specific task, then you want to be able to guide it, prompt engineer it. We are building, I mentioned before, like a vector database. So that's our internal content, that it references that it can make sure the answers are accurate for our purposes. So this is really what all these people are, this is the new skills. Setting it up is really that specialized field. And then the rest is for our staff to be able to embrace using it and to figure out the limitations and how to use it, how to phrase the questions to really get answers. Because I think often people will tell me, but these models are really dumb. I asked this question and look at the rubbish it gave me. And then I said, okay, but before you look at the answer, look at the question. Did you really give it the context to understand what it needed to answer? Because it is not smart like a human being that understands. It doesn't understand who it's talking to, what is their role, what is their position, or what they would be interested in. It doesn't know any of those things. So you have to give it a lot more context. And that's what, coming back to that prompt engineering point of view. Yeah. While we don't need our staff to become prompt engineers, they have to be better at understanding how they will how you will use this technology to be more effective.
Let's say I'm asking you, like, as you are ChatGPT and I'm a user, if I can just ask, like, how much does a data scientist earn now on average?
Okay, that is a great question, but I have to tell you that it is a very big range. Okay. Because in the bank, we have got a very good progression of, typically we would take in graduates at a given pay, and that's typically something, let's say in the 400,000s would be what somebody with engineering, computer science, or BSc with data science, etc. in this field would be getting as a starting salary. Then they would become, within a 2-year period, they would become a data scientist 1, then a data scientist 2, data scientist 3. So there's 3 levels of data scientists. That is the formal positions. Then there's data science manager, there's data science head, and then we've got the chief data analytics officer roles on top of that. So that sounds like a lot of positions, but I guess to some extent, in this field, people are quite mobile in terms of jobs. So it is very important to have a career progression, because you're not just staying at the same level for a very long time period. So within a 2 to 4 year period, you would expect to get a promotion to a next level. And that's the way that we are retaining staff. You mentioned before, like there's a lot of competition for jobs in this. So we make sure, obviously, that the candidates that are better, that are performing, that are working harder, that are committed, that they are getting promoted. And then that means that there's really good job growth in this. And if I can say, I always do a bit of marketing on this, the Chief Data Analytics Officer, which is my role now, if you think about that role, 5 years ago, probably that did not exist at all. There was chief data officers. But it has now come to the point where actually the analytical work that is done is so much more than what the original focus was on BI reporting, managing data, but the ability to develop models, to deploy models, to use AI, generative AI, means that the analytical part of the job has become, as important at least as the data. Without good and clean data, you really can't do anything. But that's not good enough. You need to have the analytical skills and the capacity in your area, and you have to have a progression of talent. People in the analytical area often, almost always want to work for people that are analytical as well, that they can learn from. If you are sitting in a small company, etc., then it's much harder. You can train yourself, and the tools are quite powerful nowadays to do that. But it is quite, I think, a privilege, and people do enjoy that when they get exposure to those different levels, and they have the view in mind that one day they can be a chief data analytics officer, which we've now created as a formal field. Now, you can study different things to become this. It doesn't mean there's lots of things, like I mentioned, degrees that you can study, whether that is, you can be an actuary, you can be a BSc in mathematics and statistics, or you could have even studied in the commerce field but done statistics, etc., or an engineer or computer scientist. And there is a professional role to look forward, because people will often, they will tell their kids, but their daughters or their sons, study a profession, become a lawyer, doctor, engineer, etc., because that's a good. And what we are saying is actually data analytics has become a profession, even though there's not necessarily an industry body. There are people that are talking about creating industry bodies for this and accreditations. So you're not, you could be a professional engineer, you could be a qualified actuary. There's not exactly that equivalent, but from a pay perspective and from a seniority and the position inside at least the bank, and a lot of other organizations are moving this way, they're seeing they need to have executives that understand this technology, because otherwise it's not going to happen by itself. You really need a level of dedication, and there's a level of skill and capability that is needed to really make use of this effectively.
Awesome. Also, another question that I have is, FNB is a big bank. Obviously, you've got vast amounts of data that is sitting with you. How are you commercializing this data as a financial services institution?
Okay, that's a great question, and that is actually, if I had to say, that is one of my key KPIs and for all the CDIOs in the group, and we have over 20 of them, is really how we create value. How we create value for our customers, how we create value for the group and for the wider community. So the commercialization of data is a big driver. And I would say I can explain it in maybe two dimensions. The one dimension is to create data products inside the group that are reusable. So you mentioned we have a lot of data, so we can be more specific. We can say we have 4 main lines of business in FNB and the group. The first one is transacting. So, for example, I can tell you 2.5 billion transactions to the total of payments. Our customers did 2.5 billion payments to the value of 50 trillion rand. And that cuts across the brands. That's now across FNB and RMB and includes the retail and the commercial and the corporate side of the group. So transacting data, payments and receipts into accounts would be a big set of data. Then in Lend, we have a lot of data. So I mentioned previously the credit processes. So obviously, we lend, let's say, more than 1 trillion rand in South Africa alone. In the wider group, if you include the broader Africa, and in the UK, it's over 1.5 trillion. There's a lot of data that is tied to that lending in order to assess customers. Once customers have loans, are they repaying those loans? What is happening with customers from an ongoing risk management point of view? Then there's the investment side. Now, obviously, to fund those loans, we have to get deposits from customers. So the deposit-taking business and the way that customers invest money with us, whether it's overnight in an account or whether it's a term product that may have higher rates, etc., that is a very important data area as well. That also includes being able to analyze that and being able to give customers advice on how to best manage their money, how to invest it, etc. For that, we need to understand their needs. We need to understand their family structure. Do they have kids that they need to cater for their education? Do they need to cater for their own retirement, depending on what age they are? What other dependencies? What assets do they have? Homes and cars, etc. That obviously need maintenance, that may need insurance, etc. And that brings us to the fourth pillar, insurance, which by itself is we have created, we think, a very compelling insurance business in FNB because we have rich information from customers, because we're able to give them offers directly on the app, etc. So it doesn't have to go through intermediaries. We can be very price competitive in terms of it, and we can make the process very slick. Mm-hmm. And also, I don't know if you have had to look for your insurance policies. Where are they? What is covered? You have to look around in emails and stuff. All of our stuff is on the app. So you can immediately go in. You can see what contracts, what is the contract that you sign. You can see what kind of cover you have. You can even change the level of cover you have, etc. So those are ways in which we can really use the information, the data products. What goes with that, sorry, and I do speak quite long.
No, that's fine.
Is all the models that actually help take the decisions. So on transacting, you might think, well, transaction is just a transaction. What decision is there? Actually, from a regulatory perspective, we have to check every single payment that a customer does. We have to do suspicious transaction reporting. We have to do customer due diligence for customers that are exhibiting very high risk. We have to obviously understand if customers are PEPs or POIs, using banking terminology, but that is really if they're politically exposed, if they're prominent individuals, that we have to do analysis on that and have to do reporting on that. If transactions are cross-border, we have to do analysis of that. We have to understand if there's potential for fraud. So one of the biggest reasons why people would bank with us is because they feel safe. They feel it's a reputable institution. We have got advanced fraud monitoring. People open accounts with us. We would be doing all kinds of checks to make sure that your money is safe with us. And if you're making payments, that it's actually you. That's, for example, if you're doing it via the app, etc. There's a high level of security with that. So imagine all of those, every single of 2.5 billion payments the customers does has to do all of those checks. And it has to happen pretty much in real time. And that's just on Transact. On Lend, I won't go into detail, but you can imagine Lend has actually got the most models that we have in the bank to assess customer risk. If you're giving customers money, are you going to get it back? And the bank is, if you think about it, sitting in a position where if out of every 100 Rand that we give out, we need to get 99 Rand back. That's typically, if you think about the long-term loss ratio for the bank, is sitting at about 1%. So banks actually have to be pretty careful with that. If you compare that to, let's say, a municipality or some of the other institutions, you would see that they're only getting 2/3 of the money back that they're billing, etc. You would not be able to operate a bank on that basis. Banks have to be much more careful with lending, but obviously at the same time we are lending out hundreds of billions or even 1 trillion Rand to the economy. And if the processes must be slick, they must ideally be automated. So that's where the modeling that sits behind that is very important. The risk management and the collections and everything else. And if you're not giving money to customers, they will go somewhere else where they can get money. So you have to make that process as slick as possible, but you have to be very responsible. Otherwise, it would not be a bank. You would not be able to give low interest rate loans, etc., on home loans, etc., if you had high default rates.
Also, just going back a little bit, thanks, Dr. Chris, about you mentioned that you are working with, I think, 4 universities for this graduate program. If you can just mention these universities, and does it mean that other graduates from other universities can't also?
No, absolutely. No, look here, this is just in terms of my area that we're specifically doing things. I'm not sure I want to, I'm not, we're proud of working with universities. I think across the group we hire from all the universities.
Okay.
And I think there's relationships between the bank and all the universities. But just specifically on these topics, for example, we would have specific people that are working like on from the financial side. We have somebody that's working with vets. We have a relationship with the actuarial department at Pretoria. We have with financial risk management. We have a partnership with UCT. And then we have got a relationship with the University of Stellenbosch as well. And then, yes, of course, I'm not saying the other universities. We have got Dr. Mark Nasilla works with UJ as well. But we do meet with University of KZN. We meet with all the universities on a regular basis. I mean, sometimes the programs are just a bit more formulated or a bit more formalized because we are doing some research. We're maybe funding some research or specific faculty on these topics, etc. But I would say that we're not. It's not to. There's no exclusion in this. We are open to. We are hiring from all the institutions across the country. Obviously, where we can influence some of the programs in the universities that we like, if they like to listen to us. Sometimes universities don't want to. They don't want business to tell them what to do. We're clearly not. We're not in a position to tell professors what their curriculum should be, but we are, because we are hiring a lot of students. We can highlight what are the trends that we are seeing, what are the kind of skills that we are needing, because maybe it's not a big deal for them to switch to a computer language. There's something that we need more, etc., because it probably doesn't impact their academic, processes, but it just makes it easier and quicker for students to come in already having skills that are more suitable.
Great. So when are you recruiting the next group of these data scientists, and what do they have to look out for? What do you look for you to be able to recruit these youngsters?
So if I can just say, data scientists and the quantitative hiring, that is part of the wider. We're hiring across disciplines, but this is the area that I guess I'm most impacted by. So I'll speak more in terms of that. We are really looking at typically at people that have completed a 4-year degree is preferable. So if you're doing a 3-year degree, do honors as well. That allows you to pick up more skills. And often we are also even interested in people with a master's program.
Okay.
Not that much PhD, because I think there's just a few of those. But especially now in these fields, some of the topics are becoming more complex, and having some deeper skills and a bit more experience is very useful when we're hiring. In my field, typically mathematics and statistics, it's more about the courses, whether you do those courses as part of studying engineering, actuarial science, a computer science degree. It will just give you a different angle on it. If you're coming from computer science, students are often better at programming.
Okay.
If they're coming from engineering, they can think more design thinking, and especially now with, let's say, in AI, you're programming an agent that is basically can be basically using multiple sets of data with different large language models, etc. So that's the kind of design thinking is more important. Or if it's actuarial, often actuarial students are very good at risk management, because that's a big part of what they do in actuarial science. So often, if somebody is going to go into more a credit analytical field, or is doing managing the risk of solutions, maybe that other people also designed. But I think one needs to be careful not to typecast and say, if you studied this is only what you can do.
Okay.
But there is a range of skills, and then the teams are also quite interdisciplinary. So you don't need 5 people with exactly the same skill. You need a set of teams. So you would typically want some data scientists, and some of the data scientists may be better at actually profiling and understanding data. Some may be better at modeling. Then you need data engineers that are typically a lot better at understanding how they will schedule the tasks, how they will get the information to flow safely and securely, and understand encryption, etc. From one area maybe into like a private virtual cloud environment, and how the data would come back from there. How we are putting decisions behind APIs, so application programming interfaces, so that it can be easily accessible via multiple business areas that need to use the same function. And then there's a lot of specialist roles that have developed. It's almost, it's not like these fields didn't exist before, but I don't know if you have heard of information architects, data modelers, enterprise solution architects. These are cloud engineers, AI engineers, machine learning ops engineers. These are jobs that probably didn't really have a lot of airtime 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Whereas now in our organization we have specialist areas. So we would have a lead information architect in the group, and then we would have lead information architects in each of the major areas.
Okay.
And data modeling is the same. Okay. And it's okay. I won't go into detail explaining what these different jobs do, but there is a lot of specialization that people can do. And it means that we can cater for all kinds of, some people maybe they really like to work more with people. Other people maybe they like to become more specialized in a given area, and they're not necessarily designing the solutions, but they're helping other teams solve it. This program management is a big field as well, which is not really data science, but we're finding that the program managers that we're having, because they would run from a big program to lots of small little projects, and we're running them I don't know if you've heard of Agile. Agile is a new way that we're developing things, which is, trying to be much more flexible and delivering output in a way that is delivering value incrementally as it goes on. Whereas the old waterfall style was somebody writes a business requirement, and then it goes to someone else functional, then somebody develops code for maybe a year, and then they give a product back, and then people say, but that's not what I wanted. That's the way of doing things. We're trying to change to more paradigm, so that then there's a change in even how you manage projects. We have Scrum Master. Scrum Master's got nothing to do with rugby.
Yeah.
It is the analogy. Is it like a Scrum? So the Scrum Master is organizing that set of people that they can work together, and that they have got, let's say, daily stand-ups, and they're delivering on what we call a cadence, where they're doing sprints. Every 2 weeks, they actually have got targets for every 2 weeks to release, which is very different from a traditional IT setup.
Maybe just lastly, just to hear from you, we know FNB for its innovations. You guys have been innovating all these years, from e-wallet to I don't know. What sort of innovations are we looking forward to going into the future, talking about this data that you're sitting on?
Yeah, I think so. The biggest one from my perspective in data analytics that is directly customer facing is really the search and chat capabilities on the app itself. So what you would find today is the FNB app is incredibly rich in functionality. Actually, we often sometimes say internally that it is almost too rich. There is more than 100 different applets that you can pick from. And the truth is actually that many customers are not using even a fraction of that capability. So making it a lot easier for customers, making it a lot more simple for them, is really if they can just ask stuff. Now today you can ask stuff whether you're doing it in search. When you open up the app, and the FNB app will give you a search bar, and you're typing there, how can we help you? You can ask a question there. It can give you links that you can click to different things. Now, that is using natural language processing, because it's understanding what you're saying. But what it's not yet doing is giving you a very nice answer that summarizes the question and then gives you the links to be able to do it. Okay. So that's really what we're developing. There is, obviously, we have secure chat functionality. Today you talk to a banker, but the banker does not answer immediately. So it is obviously what we're now trying to do is to get a generative AI agent to be able to give you an answer immediately, but yes, to be able to understand when it needs to route you to a human agent, when that is where it is necessary, to help our staff also help you on the platform. So that I think is a big thing for us. I did talk about that in the customer facing.
So you don't have to see like the agent typing; it just gives you like straight away.
You can ask it. Well, that's the whole point. You can ask it a question, and it will be able to give you a much better answer. Today, it will give you immediate answer, but it's not necessarily. It will give you links that you then can click to do. Let's say your colleague asked the question about e-wallet. So yes, you can ask it to e-wallet. It will give you a link to. That's where you get to like reverse the e-wallet or whatever, stop the e-wallet or whatever it is that you want to do. But I think it can be easier to use. And then we have very rich information. Like I said, we have all these like 100+ applets. How are we packaging that and communicating it to you in a way that is more relevant and contextual to you? You would see that we are, for example, we've got we'll put up advertisements for products. We have the my offers. I have to log in to get to that. And it gives me, it gives me a tailored set of things. And you would see these, they've all got pictures with them, etc.
Yeah.
So our ability now to be able to mass personalize these, we've put in buttons like or dislike. So we know, don't show that again. This person doesn't want to see this. Again, people tell us, why are you showing me this offer? I don't like it. That's not what I want. Well, now you can tell us you don't like it. We won't show you that one again. And it's across our pillars. So our transact, lend, invest, insure. That's typically how we group things. So if I had to, say one thing, and that's what customers see, then obviously we have huge innovations that are not what you see, but is how we are better at providing credit to you, how we're better at fraud management, how we're better at all of those. So those things, it's often easier to do because we can do it in the background. The customer will get the benefit, but they may not even know it immediately. They may not notice it, but they will at least not fall prey to fraud, or they will get finance, maybe which otherwise we may not been able to give them, or offers like that. So that's a lot of the innovation is actually not necessarily directly what the customer can see, but it's the customer experience. And it's incredibly, because we have got such a rich set of things, it creates its own challenge. What is the right thing to actually be talking to a customer? How do we give a customer financial advice that is suited to their needs on a mass basis? That would be probably my last example from that. That is really, if you think about it, does everybody, or 10 million customers on the retail side, do they all have access to a private banker or a wealth advisor that can advise them? No, but through NAV Money and many of our tools, we can help them manage a budget. We can give them tips on how to improve their credit status. We can help them with investments, etc. And AI and generative AI will allow us to do that much more in English, and maybe in other languages as well soon. But certainly for now, that is a way people really, I think, if you can give them a personalized message for them, it's much more interesting than if they're thinking, well, we're just displaying some ad because we want to sell something.
All right, maybe just as a parting shot, just to let the potential graduates to join the program know, like, are you going to be advertising for them to start applying, or is a year-long thing where they can just apply whenever they...
Yeah, it is ongoing. Obviously, the big take-ins are in January, February. So that's that's when the growth of graduates join us. So the program is really a year in advance. So if you're applying now, then that is really for a 2026, 2025 start to skipping a year there. But yes, the best is to get into the application process early along, because I guess the different areas are saying, how many graduates do they need and all the different areas, and then the process starts. So if you're starting to apply too late in the year, if you're applying in November, then a lot of the placements will already have taken place. So I would say now would be late for this year.
For this year, okay.
But it would be early for next year. But yes, I do think the different options are certainly FNB. We have a very big graduate program, but like I said, people in the wider group, we also, there's also taken into the first strand side graduates, and then the R&B program as well. So there are a lot of employment opportunities that are there every year.
Typically, how many applications do you receive?
Well, that's a good question. I actually don't know how many applications. I mean, we are placing probably around over 200 graduates in the data analytics area alone. It's well over 100 graduates, and then obviously I have to include the first strand and the R&B programs. Then it is even slightly more than more than 100 in data analytics alone.
Awesome. That was Dr. Christoph Nieuwoudt, who is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at FNB. Thanks a lot, Dr. Chris, for joining us at ITWeb TV. We really appreciate talking to you and for the insights that you have provided with us today.
Admire, thank you very much. This was a great pleasure.
Awesome. For this and more videos and podcasts, please visit ITWeb TV and subscribe. Thank you. This episode of ITWeb TV is brought to you in association with ITWeb Security Summit, the must-attend gathering of IT, security, and business decision makers. Visit itweb.co.za for more information.